I know. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Orient Addicts podcast. My guest for the episode is a reporter for The Guardian. He is also a very big Orient fan, Martin Beelum. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. It's really, really lovely to be on here.
So obviously, you're an Orient fan. How did you become an Orient fan? How did you start supporting Orient?
Wow. So I did go over to games during the 1970s because that's how old I am. And actually, one of my relatives, Carol Stokes, used to be, I think, club secretary or certainly worked at the club in the 1970s. But what really actually happened was I've got a really, really good friend who always hated football. And in Italia 90, that World Cup, when England did so well with like Paul Gascoigne and Gary Lineker and got to the semi-final and it was the penalties, he said, I want to start going watching football. And so all our friends were like, you should go to Arsenal, you should go to Tottenham. And then we just decided to start going to Orient. And so from the 90s, often mostly midweek games, we used to just go to Orient games on a Tuesday and just basically stand on the North Terrace when it was the terrace before it had the stand built, and then go to the pub afterwards. And it was some good times and some bad times. But I had a season ticket there now, I guess, for 6 or 7 years. So I'm pretty regular and try and get to as many away games as I can as well now.
So you obviously had a big connection to the club with that with the secretary relation. So how do you think the start of our season has gone for you personally?
So I think I'm a bit boring about this, but I genuinely think the margins at League One and League Two level are so fine, and you can be playing terribly and then end up fluking results, or you can be playing quite well and then end up on the wrong end of results. I think we're doing okay. I know there are a lot of sort of like doom merchants around on social media, but I don't think we're going to be in a relegation scrap. I don't think we'll be pushing for the playoffs, but I think we'll comfortably finish 11th to 14th. It's a good squad. There are some players who clearly are stepping up to a level that maybe is above what we thought they might have got to. I think the signings have been okay so far. Galbraith has really impressed me. I think Joe Pigott, a lot of people were saying he doesn't look like the kind of guy who's going to score goals in League One, but he got one at the weekend, and I thought he took it well. So I feel like we've been a bit unlucky. Like the Charlton game, we could have got something out of. We obviously got absolutely steamrolled by Stevenage, but against Cambridge, we look great, and I think they'll do fine. And I think, to be honest, for this season, surely the ambition of the club has got to be to consolidate a place in the league, and then the following year it's a playoff push, and the year after that, if you haven't made the playoffs, it's a title push. That's or an automatic promotion push. That I'm sure is like the 3-year plan there. And so there's been some disappointing results, but I think the performances have mostly been fine, I think. But maybe I'm just easily pleased. I know there are a lot of people who are quite critical, but there you go. That's how I see it.
So you think most of the bad performances are mainly on paper?
Yeah, I think so. And I think even, the Exeter game was such a weird game, I think, because I felt like it was really quite flat in the first half, and the atmosphere in the stadium was less than I expected it to be. But we made chances and we missed chances. I don't think they had a shot at our goal until like 20 minutes. So it felt like the first half was almost a nothing of a game. And then the second half, it's like we've obviously won it with that fantastic goal. What a strike. What a way to take your opportunity right at the end of the game. But if you look back at the highlights package, probably Exeter should have gone 2-1 ahead with that chance they had a little bit before then. But I don't know. I didn't feel like we absolutely dominated Exeter and should have won. I thought it was a fair result. We made more chances than them. But I thought it was a good performance, and but you know, maybe we can just play the team who are top of the league every week, because that seems to bring out the best in us. It's like Cambridge and Exeter in short succession. We've definitely been able to sing top of the league. You're having a laugh, haven't we?
Yeah, that has been our main point of success is teams that are topping the table, which is quite surprising. I mean, I don't think they performed how their position suggested they would. I was very surprised that we played better in the first half. I mean, I don't think they had much in the first half. I think we had more than them. Obviously, we had a lot of success from corners.
Yeah, I thought we looked strong in the set pieces, and I watched the highlights reel again this morning, and it's always I always think it's funny when you've been to the game compared to watching it on the highlights if you've only seen the stream, because like the chances that we had where was Beckles hit the crossbar, didn't he? And it's like from our end of the game, for our end of the ground, I didn't realize it had been like such a close chance, and when I saw the highlights, I was like, oh my god, how did he not score? But yeah, I mean, I think at half time as well, if you were looking at Twitter or social media at half time in the Exeter game, there are a lot of people saying we're going to get punished for not taking our chances here. And obviously, Exeter immediately they couldn't put in another 45 minutes as poor as they did. So they came out of the blocks really, really fast, got the goal, which I think James was unlucky with. It's like it's a mistake. It's what is it? It's a half slip. He kind of had lost the flight of the ball. And it's a great finish by I should have remembered his name, but it was a great finish by their striker, wasn't it? But then again, it's like, as I say, fine margins. That whizzed in off the underside of the bar, and then when you compare it to Rule the previous week against Stevenage, where his shot just from distance crashed into the bar, and I don't know how you coach people about those kind of like centimeters or millimeters that are going to make a difference in that situation. But once they scored, I mean, I assumed we were going to go on to lose 2 or 3-0, but that's not what happened.
Yeah, obviously, I think they were quite lucky to get that goal. I think it was completely against the run of play, and it was such a beautiful goal. But you sort of felt robbed because you didn't feel like they deserved it. They didn't build up to it. They sort of just got lucky with a ball, and then James either slipped or dived in and missed it and gave him a one-on-one situation, which he absolutely took advantage of perfectly from his perspective, at least. But I don't think they deserve the goal, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think Orient had dominated the first half and had not taken the chances that we'd made. But that's League One football, isn't it? You've got to score when you get those chances. Unfortunately, we did right at the end.
Yeah, we weren't clinical in the first half, which was obviously a big problem. I mean, if a few of those corners chances were taken properly and you know put away, then we could have been 2-0, 3-0 up, in my opinion. Um, but I think we deserved the 3 points though.
Yeah, I didn't come away from the ground feeling that we'd robbed a result there. And I think I'm not. I should have checked up the details, but I think it's a long time since we've won there, and we've had a lot of unhappy trips down there. But
22 years apparently.
yeah, I was heard someone saying that as we were leaving the ground, and it's the first time I've been there. Actually, I think to be honest as well, in all these years, I think Exeter is actually the furthest I've been to an away game. So now I've got like Carlisle or somewhere like that in my sights as well. Once you've done it once, but yeah, I didn't think we robbed it. I thought I could see how it could have easily have ended up a draw. I think it was good. I think the mental resilience as well of the team coming back from going a goal down against Exeter, and it's like even that Wickham game is, the team I felt finished. I think even with only 10 men, or I thought Orient finished stronger against Wickham and looked like the more likely side, and so I feel like I know there's an issue about the disciplinary record, but I feel like there is a mental toughness in that Orient squad now, which maybe we've had at times over the last few years. I think we had it when Justin Edinburgh was manager, and I think Richie Wellens has got that there. But maybe there have been plenty of years where I've been watching Orient, where you feel like they've had a great first half, immediately concede a goal straight after the half time, and you could imagine them just wilting in the sunshine and the game petering out. And this squad just has got a bit more mentality about it. And I think one thing I really thought as well is you get players like I would say George Moncur. I thought he didn't have an amazing game, and it was a hot day, and there was a bit because I was standing and I was right near one of the corner flags, and there was a bit where just before he came off, he was like chasing for a ball, and you could kind of see that he probably wasn't going to win it, and you could see that he was really huffing and puffing. And so I guess there's a question: is he now 1 year too old for League One? But I think someone like George Moncur in that dressing room and Darren Pratley in that dressing room, I think there's really strong influence on the younger players. And so, yeah, I was just impressed from them, sort of like coming back from that setback of like essentially conceding a goal from an individual error.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's great to have experience in the changing room, but talking about Monker, I don't think he's really been much of a success as a signing. I don't think he's delivered as much as we would have liked him to deliver. Um,
Yeah, maybe. I guess maybe it's difficult to think of like games where he's really shone individually, but I feel almost like last when he joined it was quite a statement signing of intent, and then they've gone on from that to I think one of the things that I think is funny, I'm sure if I come on this podcast again, people will get bored of me saying, is that I think basically last year we ran away with League Two. We were never in any danger of not winning that league, and it never felt like it. Like I didn't like even with 5 games to go, and we had such a points cushion. I never felt like that we were just like completely in charge and dominating things. And so it's such a weird thing when you look back statistically because that team absolutely did. And but one thing that I worry about this season, so the one thing I do worry about in League One is that I do think we're really missing Vigouroux, and not just for his shot stopping, but also for the way he marshalled the back line. And so I think if there was one thing I would say that I was unhappy about at Exeter is that I didn't feel confident in our keeper. And I feel like basically if James makes a mistake or any of the centre backs make a mistake last season, 19 times out of 20 Vigouroux stopped it anyway, and we don't have that safety net as much this season, and so it's going to be I think when we make defensive mistakes, we're going to get punished this year, and so that worries me slightly. I've not been convinced by either keeper.
I mean, obviously on paper we haven't had great results. What do you think is the main issue that stopped us from getting points on the board more often?
I honestly think, apart from the Stevenage game and the Portsmouth game. Okay, so the Stevenage game and the Portsmouth game. But I honestly think most of the games, so particularly the away games I've been to, Charlton, Wickham, and Exeter, I think have been really, really close and tight. And I think we could have got something out of the Wickham game if we hadn't had the red card. I think we probably should have got at least a point out of the Charlton game. So I don't know that there's a one big obstacle that you could name. I say I just think we're not going to be as defensively solid as we were last year. I mean, we really, really hardly let in any goals last season. And people are always clamoring for we need a striker who's going to score 20 goals a year. But if you've got a keeper who's going to make 20 crucial saves a year, that's as valuable, because that's how you turn a game that would have been 1-1 is a 1-0 victory. And so it's actually not going forward that I worry about. It's the defense I worry about this year. That's my main concern.
I mean, obviously, last season we had 23 clean sheets, an incredible defensive record, and I think if you look at it, that is probably the reason why we dominated the league as much as we did. And I mean, obviously it's a shame about Vigouroux going to a Premier League club and being happy to sit on the bench or in the reserves and pick up a pay packet, because I think he could have gone to like a mid-table championship team and done brilliantly and proved that he's a class goalkeeper.
I mean, I'm a boring old man now, and I assume he's got a mortgage to pay, and he wants to set his kids up for life, and so I wouldn't criticize him for going there. I assume he went there with his eyes open that he's not going to get much game time. But I think any professional player who's worth their salt surely thinks either I'm going to get the opportunity, there'll be an injury, there'll be a suspension, and then I'll get my chance, and then I'll demonstrate what I'm going to do. Or he's basically said, I'll sit on the bench for 6 months with the pay packet and I'll get a loan out in January or whatever. Because, yeah, I agree with you. I think he could, he easily could do a brilliant job for a championship level club, and presumably there'll be a championship level club who are struggling and their leaky defense is one of those problems, and they'll see him as a potential loan option, and then he'll have moved up a step. So I can't blame it, and from the financial point of view, I can't blame him. But I miss him very much. If you're listening.
Yeah, I do understand, obviously, why he did it. Financial reasons are good ones in the end. But one thing that really made me think, why have you gone there? Is then they signed him, and then they spent 19 million on James Trafford.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he wasn't expecting that probably, but then I suppose they had an overall business plan, and I don't know. I've got very strong opinions about Premier League clubs hoovering up players and then complaining they don't get enough game time. I think we've got Fulham coming up in the Papa John's Trophy or whatever it's called.
Yeah, their under-21 team.
Yeah, and I think as I did a quick bit of research, and some of them are out on loan, but I think they've got like 45 players who could play in that tournament, and the argument for them being invited into the tournament is because the players don't get enough game time, and I think that's because you've got 45 players. It's not our fault. I really can't see why we should be playing Fulham under 21s. I do think that tournament will end up with Man City under 21s versus Chelsea under 21s in the final at Wembley at some point. It just seems a travesty to me. But there you go, Burnley. Even Burnley, it's like how many goalkeepers do you need if you're a Premier League club? Like senior goalkeepers, do you need? I don't know. Is it 4? Because they seem to have like 4, don't they? So
yeah, squad depth is such a major part of the higher levels of the modern game, though. Now,
yeah, it is fascinating. I think one of the other things as well is that I sometimes feel like it's like watching two different sports when you go to watch Orient, and then when you're watching things in the Premier League. My dad, I know some Orient fans would not approve, but my dad has season tickets at West Ham, so I sometimes I've been to quite a few of the West Ham European games, and I go to Premier League games. That if Orient are away and it's on West Ham are playing at home on Sunday, my dad will say, "Oh, come along," and it's just like the experience of watching a game with VAR as opposed to not watching it. It's really interesting. I do feel like it's all about squad depth and which 16 players in the end can you put on in the field during a match in the Premier League or the Champions League or whatever. And it's fascinating. I enjoy watching it, but I quite enjoy the rawness still of League One. And I also go over to see both Walthamstow FC and West Essex FC, who play at Wadham Lodge, which is just down the road from where I live in Walthamstow. And so I see like a multitude of levels of the game. And sometimes I remember the Wickham game particularly. It's like there was I don't know whether he had a corner or free kick, and a guy had so much of Omar Beckel's shirt, and it was right in front of me. And I looked at it, and I just thought cameras would have picked that up and given a penalty for that. And it's just not even it just hasn't even been clocked at all by the officials at our level. But at the Premier League or Champions League, there's no doubt it would have been replayed 17 times in slow motion, and everyone would go, he's got hold of his shirt and he's pulled him over, and it would have been almost a stonewall penalty. So I find it fascinating. To be honest, I enjoy all of it. I love going to football. It was really, really great going to Exeter. As I say, it's the furthest I'd been to an away game, and I really, really enjoyed the day at St James Park. It was really, really good fun.
Yeah, obviously, I didn't actually know that you went to West Essex. I went there recently for an FA Cup preliminary round, there, and I actually wondered. I had a little research of your Twitter before recording, and I wondered why they followed you on Twitter.
Everyone follows me on Twitter because I'm very funny on Twitter. No, I don't really actually. I've gotten a Twitter account, but I don't really tweet anymore. But yeah, I go and see Waterloo, and I go and see West Essex, and I also go and see the Leighton Orient's women team used to be a different team, and then I don't know if you remember, but there was some controversy, and so Leighton Orient's women team became a new independent team called London Seaward, and I still go and see them, and I go and see Leighton Orient women as well. So yeah, I enjoy lots of football at all levels. I'll basically go and watch 22 people kick a ball around on the field for, if I've not got anything else to do, that's that I really, really enjoy spending my time doing that.
Yeah, obviously, football is a big joy in life. But let's touch back on Orient season. How do you think the rest of the season will go?
I think that I think we'll end up we'll be bobbling along above the actual relegation fight. I imagine there'll be lots of grumpiness from some of our fans on social media. But I think that squad's got enough to stay in League One. I'd genuinely be surprised if we got relegated. I don't think we'll get near the playoffs. That's the go. Oh no, you heard it here first, etc. That's a clip that we played back to me when I'm really embarrassed after we either finish bottom or finish top, and it will prove that I know nothing about football despite going to watch it all the time. But that's what I feel as well. It's like I've never played at a high level or any decent level, and I say that how do you know it's all very well shout and put that free kick in top bins, but it's like how do you coach a player at League One level not to hoof it over the stand because that's what they do all the time, and these are clearly some of the most technically gifted players who've come out of their schools and all of the academies and everything, and then you still see them put it into Rose Ed from a free kick. So it's clearly much more difficult to play than it is to comment on. That's the one thing I take away from it.
I mean, obviously, we try to understand about as much about the game as we can, but obviously, we are just outside looking in at the moment.
Yeah, and as I say, I really, really enjoy it. And I think one of the things as well is that I think the attendances have really, really been up at Brisbane Road, and the atmosphere is so much better in the home ground. And it's like last time we were in League One, our average home attendance was about half of what it is now. And there are going to be sold out matches this season, and I just think it's brilliant. I think it's a brilliant time to be an Orient supporter. I think we obviously had the terrible time under the Italian clown, but everything has been just like as like 2 title wins in 6 years or whatever under the current owners. It's been fantastic. I think it's a great time to be an Orient fan, and I think the travelling sport is mostly really, really, really nice. There's lots of familiar faces that you see every week. I'm really, really enjoying following the team at the minute.
Yeah, obviously, it's a very good time to be an Orient fan. I know some very bitter fans would disagree with you in the moment, but
Yeah,
um,
of course.
of course they would. But talking about the Italian clown, how do you feel about the current ownership?
I think they've done a great job. I think it's really interesting listening to their interviews because I think like the step up from League Two to League One is difficult in terms of the depth of squad you need and the kind of players you need. I think the step up from League One to the Championship is a huge challenge in terms of the ground and the resources and everything, and a lot more financially. It's like a lot of Championship teams lose money, and so you obviously want to go up the football pyramid, but I sort of there's a question about whether it's worth it sometimes, whether you're going to actually financially wreck yourself by going up. Um, so we'll see. Let's say Richie Wellens said something in an interview, didn't he? That after we got promoted, that he had a long chat with the owners, and there's a 3-year plan. That's why I assume the 3-year plan is survive, playoffs, automatic. That's the 3 years. I would have thought that's the idea. But I guess you've got to get the money in place that you don't want to go to the championship and have a terrible season and come straight back down as some clubs do. And it's difficult with our ground because we're so constrained for capacity. I mean, just imagine if you're in the championship now. And I used to live in Leeds. I used to go to Ellen Road really regularly, and still like Leeds are like my second team. And I just like imagine if Leeds were coming to Brisbane Road, we'd have to give them the whole of the East Stand. We'd have to move, the season tickets holders in the East Stand out. So then you've got less tickets to sell on the day for one of your big matches. I think it's a big step up. But I'm happy and confident with where they are. As I say, I know there's naysayers, but I think the club's in a really, really good place geographically and financially, and with the attitude of the owners, and where we are back in League One in the league, which I think is for people of my vintage, the old Division 3. Which I think that's the kind of level with that size ground. That's the kind of club that you want to be, Division 2 or Division 3. I think anyway.
I mean, obviously, touching on previous ownership, there's not really much room for growth of the ground due to the apartments in the four corners, which don't allow us to build sideways and back.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that you could redevelop the East Stand within the space of the flats if you then bought all the flats that had the windows and just kept them empty. That's what that would be my suggestion. Just buy the flats with the windows that you're going to make not have a view anymore with the new stand, and do that there. There you go. But I'm not an architect or a football club owner. I'm sure it'd be a very expensive process.
Yeah, obviously, we'd need to get to the level where that would be required first, obviously, before we're going to see that. But touching on the future, I ask this to every guest: where do you see Orient in 5 years?
I would hope that we'll. Where do I see Orient in 5 years? I reckon we'll be in League One, but we may have had one dismal season in the Championship. That's a really unambitious thing, isn't it? But that's what I think. I think we'll be in League One in 5 years' time, but we may have gone up to the Championship and come back down because our ground and budget isn't ever going to be big enough to compete with teams who've come down from like Premier. Because it's not just the teams who've been relegated from the Premier League that year, is it? It's like there's a lot of clubs who think they're a Premier League clubs and are running on Premier League budgets, and we're never going to be on that budget. So yeah. I feel terrible having said that now, but that's it. Where will we be in 5 years' time? In League One, but having had one terrible season in the Championship.
I mean, Luton Town have proven it is possible to climb up the ranks with smaller budgets and smaller grounds. I think it's more about spending smartly but that's such a tough job to do in the current
Yeah,
space.
but I don't know. I reckon at the end of the season, it's like if you ask Luton fans, have you enjoyed having a season where you get battered 5-0, 6-0, 7-0 by City, Liverpool, whatever? I reckon they'll have loved the days out, but that's not what you want week in, week out from football. I'm sure
No.
the Premier League will shrink further, and it'll end up being about 12 clubs who play each other 4 times a year.
Sadly, that does seem like the direction of football at the top level, but we can still enjoy football. Touching more on your professional career, not football, did you ever dabble into sports journalism?
I have done some sports journalism for the Guardian. So I often cover the Olympics and the Paralympics and the Winter Olympics for the Guardian. So it's one of those things that I'm not madly passionate about all the different individual sports, but I'm quite good at pulling it all together. So for the Olympics and Paralympics in Tokyo. I did our daily newsletter every day. So yeah, I've done a bit of sports journalism, but I also do Doctor Who and Eurovision journalism. So I do a lot of very different bits of journalism.
Yeah, of course. So, like, what got you into journalism? What made you want to be a journalist?
Well, I studied history at university, and I always argue that history is a bit like journalism. It's just that everyone's dead, and so all you've got is what they've written down. And what you're trying to do is understand what happened and why people did the things that they did. And then when I left university, I went and worked in record shops because I used to be in bands. I still am in bands and sing and stuff, and I do my own electronic music. Um, but when the internet happened in the late 1990s, I really got into making websites, and so then I started working making websites for media companies, and then I sort of gradually became a journalist. It's quite an unusual career path. I think often people want to be a journalist and they go to college to study journalism and then they become a journalist. But I sort of drifted into it a bit. But I say that, but I've been doing it for like over 20 years now, so I'm probably being a bit putting myself down a little bit if I still keep saying, oh well, I didn't really train as a journalist. So I cover a lot of stuff for the Guardian. So mostly at the minute I cover the Ukraine war, but I do big events like the coronation and elections, and I mostly write our live coverage, which is it's quite a difficult and technical job because it's quite scary sometimes because you can be doing the live coverage of the coronation or the Ukraine war, and you're sort of publishing live to the internet as if it's a live, so almost like a live news television show. And so you don't have much of a safety net. You're a bit on a tightrope to make sure that you've got absolutely everything right. So yeah, so that's one reason why then going to see Orient or Walthamstow or West Essex or whatever is a really really great release from doing something that takes a lot of concentration during the day every day.
Yeah, obviously you've been doing journalism for years, but you also have other ventures like your own personal blog and your musical venture, the M Orchestra.
Yeah, I make electronic music about ghosts, which I always think sounds really really weird when I say it out loud. But basically, I take old horror movies or old documentaries about the paranormal, and then take the talking out of it, and then build electronic music around it. And then when I play it live, I have the original videos, and there's a projector, so there's like a screen show behind me of what the ghost story is while I'm playing, and I really really enjoy it. In fact, actually, thing is, when I went to Exeter, I left the Exeter game and then I went to Bristol because I was singing. I was one of the guest singers with a tribute band to the Fall, Marky Smith's band. They're a sort of like famous indie band from Manchester, and so yeah, so I basically went to the game, then went to a pub to watch a bit of England versus Ukraine before my train arrived, and then got the train to Bristol, and then sang at a gig. So yeah, it was a very busy weekend for me. A lot of fun and a fair amount of beer as well. It must be said.
I mean, you seem like you have a very busy life. I mean, you obviously fill your days up with doing as much as humanly possible.
Well, I honestly, I just think you're only here once, so just like make the best of it and take opportunities. I feel like just like always take opportunities when you can. I think it's a really important philosophy in life.
Yeah, obviously, that's a really good philosophy, and it's a great way to live life. So is there anything you'd like to say at all at the end of
No,
this?
no, I think it's been lovely chatting to you, and I know I sit near you in the North Stand, so I will no doubt talk to you again, not on the podcast, and I'd love to come back and do it again. So thank you very, very much for inviting me. It's been great fun. Thank you very much.
It's been great having you as well. It'd be great to have you back on. Um, you've been a great guest, and I'll see you in a bit.
All right, brilliant. Thanks very much, mate. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.